how can you learn early and often that there's a tension that exists, a positive tension that exists between knowing those common expressions of who you are as a leader and knowing those common issues that you also bring as a leader, those areas where you're not as skilled, you don't have the capacity, you may not have had the developmental opportunity yet. And that healthy tension can exist within one individual.
You are listening to the Leadership Vision podcast, sharing our expertise in the discovery, practice, and implementation of a strengths-based approach to people, teams, and culture. For more resources about developing your strengths, the strengths of your team, or the strengths of your entire organization, click the link in the show notes or visit us on the web at leadershipvisionconsulting.com. Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Freeberg. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have a great conversation that Brian Schubring, Linda Schubring, and I recorded a couple weeks ago. And it's really about the knowledge process of our team engagement series. This conversation has come out of quite a bit of work that we've been doing this summer. And as Brian said in the introduction there, how can leaders or any person who is maturing in their leadership process, how can they understand the tension that exists between knowing and understanding the different common expressions of who they are. So today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about 4 common expressions and then the flip side of that. And there's a lot in here to think about and digest. So maybe you want to have a notebook, or if you're out for a run or something, kind of jot down some mental notes and then share them with us after you've had a chance to just kind of think about maybe what are your common expressions based on what we share here. So here is Brian again to share a little bit more about this idea. Teamwork makes
the dream work.
The knowledge work. I was just saying, Linda, welcome.
Yes,
I like this sentence here in these notes. When people know themselves first, this self-knowledge grows a sense of confidence, and knowing yourself leads to greater self-confidence in team context. You know, my family is just flying, and the whole idea of putting on your mask before someone else's mask. We were talking about like self-compassion and like taking care of yourself. I feel like we do so much work trying to know other people. Like, well, how do I work with this person? I need to understand them better. But what this sentence is saying, and maybe this entire discussion today is about, yeah, that's important, but you got to know yourself first, because otherwise you have no idea what sets you off, what, triggers are, what you're good at, what you're not good at. Can you set up this whole discussion here?
I'm listening to what you just said, Nathan, and that I'm trying to follow like that line of thinking, because the answer to the question is not as simple as you pose.
Why not?
Leaders do spend a lot of time focusing on others. They spend a lot of time focusing on the challenging relationships, the obstacles that are in front of them, and how to navigate that topography. We also know that leaders try to figure other people out. You can put that like in air quotes. They try to figure someone else out, like there's some magical equation on how I can fix that relationship. And if I can fix that relationship, meaning if I can fix them, everything's going to be fine. Over and over again, we are reminded about the importance of self-reflection for a leader, for anybody, to press pause in the middle of everything and to ask themselves that question, like, well, what about me? Like, how much I really know about who I am and where I come from? And part of this conversation came from some of the curriculum that we have written around working with teams. And some of the best teams have the most self-aware people that have a large sense of knowledge about themselves, both what they bring and also those areas where they may have common issues that they're often overlooking. And part of this conversation that we're having with teams is, how can you as a leader or a person that is maturing in the leadership process, how can you learn early and often that the leaders that have it figured out understand that there's a tension that exists, a positive tension that exists between knowing those common expressions of who you are as a leader and knowing those common issues that you also bring as a leader, those areas where you're not as skilled, you don't have the capacity, you may not have had the developmental opportunity yet. And that healthy tension can exist within one individual. And that's what this conversation is really promoting. How can I be more self-aware and more knowing of those areas of common expression as who I am as an influencer, as a leader, and what are those common issues that I just naturally have tend to overlook every single time. How do we hold that in a healthy balance?
And still know that people are growing. So a lot of the leaders that we work with, they are part of our sessions because they are in an environment where a growth mindset is almost required. And what we have found is knowing yourself is one thing, but then as soon as your environment changes, the context changes, the company evolves, the organization moves in a different direction, all of a sudden you are learning new things about yourself because you're adapting and hopefully thriving in the midst of very different kinds of change.
Sometimes we find people know that they have this capacity to lead. And when a team calls on them to step into that moment, they often do that based on fear and self-doubt. There's just something inside of them that says, I'm not skilled. I don't have the capacity. Why should I speak up now? And so what we want to do is introduce this topic of knowledge and say, if we spend some time reflecting on who we actually are and become more familiar with what we actually bring, we'll have a greater sense of confidence in remembering that there are people and experiences that have been reinforcing these simple common expressions of leadership. It's been happening in some cases for decades. A simple reflection process can bolster up someone's confidence of like, yeah, that is who I am. That is how I show up. I actually have real examples around that over and over again. That level of confidence translates directly into a team context.
Do you find people more often focus on the negative examples, the things that they've been beaten down for over the years? Or
100%.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But I'm curious how you help them to make that shift in mindset of yes, be aware of those, but also focus on like what are the positive things, what are the good examples of leadership, what are the good examples of working through conflict, whatever those hot button issues are.
Well, it depends on the team. So sometimes with teams, people want to put themselves in a really bright light so that they won't be further misunderstood or they won't be further misinterpreted.
That's good.
And so then it's kind of this canned response, like, I always like this. And people might be sitting around the table thinking, no, he's not. Thinking, no, she's not. And so what we find is it's not just let's focus on the positive and that's it. It's holding all of it in tension and saying even the negative or even the bad habits, you can experience growth out of it, and it can be an invitation for you to ask others to help you. So you don't have to be everything to everybody, but rather you're opening up space to say, and then this is where I hand it off to Nathan. This is where Nathan passes it to Brian. And
are you talking about like work skills with that, or like personality skills,
everything.
For lack of a best? Everything.
I think it's both.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We are asking for people to consider their personality preferences and patterns that they bring just as an individual. So do you know yourself well enough to know your personality patterns and preferences, those patterns and preferences of how you think and how you behave, your emotions, that groundwork that has been laid throughout time? Know that same question can also be asked to you as a leader. What are those leadership preferences in your personality, in your perspective, in your skill set, in your capacities? How can we go back and reflect on when those patterns have been reinforced, encouraged, developed, and affirmed over time as well? It's both of those. There are times when I feel like the person needs to lead first, like that the personal side of you is called on, and the leadership side can take a back seat. We can also switch that equation around. Adept leaders know when that timing is right to be person first or leader first. And we're trying to just get the conversation rolling so people can gain that level of awareness. Nathan, most times people already know this about them. They just haven't done the process of reflecting, naming, and then accepting that new knowledge and integrating it into their current context. And when you begin to have these conversations live time on a team, it is really dynamic of the kind of affirmation that then begins to bubble up among team members who then validate when they've seen that person just commonly express themselves as a leader, as an influencer on the team.
When you said person first or leader first, what does that mean? What are you talking about with?
Well, I think that there is a way that I don't want to say corporate America. I think that there's a way where people need leadership. And there are some individuals that just know when leadership is needed. They know how to put on that leadership jacket. Like they know how to put that clothing on. They know how to step up just instinctively. There's a time for that to lead first. There's another time where the person needs to lead, the more empathetic, the more compassionate, the more present, the more emotionally aware side of someone, where that can lead first. We're coming alongside of someone, connecting with them relationally first, and then influencing later. I think oftentimes we overplay the need to lead, remove barriers, make clear goals, just lead forward. And my question is, can we gain a sense of knowledge of how we show up with people and alongside of them? And sometimes, or most of the time, we do that first before we then step out in front and try to lead them somewhere.
Wouldn't you want both at the same time, though? Like a leader that, says, all right, team, we got to do this really hard thing, but you can do it. We got you. Like, would you not want both? Or is it people just can't do both at the same time?
I have an opinion, but I don't know what you're going to say.
No, say it. I think we're going to say the same thing. Go.
Let's hear it.
When there is an integration between the person and the leader, a person that knows the humanity and the leader that still needs to act with courage in light of all the drama, that integration is when people, I think, are in their fullest expression of themselves.
Because most team cultures ask for one or the other and rarely ask for both.
Oh, say more about that, because I think you're right.
Team leaders will look around their team and they'll ask someone to dial up their leadership skills or leadership competencies or whatever the buzzword is in their culture. Or our times like, well, you're too sharp. You need to be more gentle or more empathetic or maybe, and so they'll dial that up. And rarely do you see leaders ask for those developmental dials or those developmental sliders to increase at the same time. What Linda is speaking to, we know leaders like that, where they arrive more whole, more on both sides, and they understand how to tip those balances one or the other as they're navigating, instead of just like, oh, I need to bring this, oh, and I need to bring that.
And so what we're talking about here today, knowledge, knowing yourself, allows you to bring both of those, what do you call them, dials or sliders on like a EQ board, bring both of those up at the same time. Is essentially the best leaders have a greater sense of self-knowledge, of self-awareness, an acceptance of themselves in the context of their organization. And that's what makes a great leader.
It's part of it, because the part two of it is when teammates do not know each other, when colleagues do not know each other well, that's what breeds common issues.
Go
so
ahead.
the knowledge of self and the knowledge of other people. So it's the both and. But at Leadership Vision, we start with the people, right? We start with the person, individual. What does that mean? And then what does that look like in the context? And these are just things that we've detected over the years.
Brian mentioned that slider. I was just thinking of like if you've ever seen like a band recording, they've got this like multi-channel board, all these channels, different instruments and voices and effects and whatever else. And it would seem to me that if you're essentially trying to get the whole team to raise all their sliders up at the same time, there is this constant tweaking of different sliders going up and down. And as, maybe individuals get more self-awareness, some stuff goes up, but then realizing, oh, wait, but these individuals aren't connecting with each other, or maybe a few are, so maybe a few sliders go up and a few go down. This isn't obviously a linear process. So as I'm, reading our notes here and we're talking about this, my immediate thought is, well, what comes first? Do I, go off into a cave and work on myself first and then come and work in a group? Obviously the answer is no, because context is everything. So how would a team begin this process of knowing themselves, knowing others within the context? And then maybe a part B is then, does a person drastically change depending on context? And then how does that person then say, well, in the work context, I know this about myself, but at home, I'm like this. And on my rec softball league, I'm like this or whatever. I don't know. You find my question out of there? I just asked a bunch. I know that you hate it when I do that, but
I did.
So
No, I
many
don't hate it.
questions.
It's really interesting. And then I follow some
You're
of
like, which question should I follow?
the other trails. I think what I want to say is, and I've told it to the young people that are in our life, but I really believe we learn the most in the context of relationship.
100%.
We learn about ourselves and we learn about other people. And so it's a little bit of chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
It's a both and. It's happening at the same time. There is time for groups to reflect together. There's times for individual reflection that causes growth, that causes the movement on the slider.
Mm-hmm.
Our role as consultants with different teams is just to invite them to look at it from a different perspective, to get them to question which one is more important,
Yeah.
the person or the context or the team. And when they start to wrestle with it, what we drive to is some sort of action step that each person can make as a contribution to the greater whole. So we're not just talking to talk. We're just rattling their cage a little bit and then saying, what are you going to take from this and integrate into your environment?
Because I think we are working with that massive soundboard. And then at times, I think that we really need to focus on the simplicity of the work that we're doing. Because Nathan, I am old enough to be part of the boombox generation. And I remember the first boombox I ever had. Yeah, the first boombox I had, volume button, cassette player. But then I upgraded to a boombox that had a 5-channel equalizer.
Oh,
that's
okay.
it, just 5.
Okay.
And that to me was a revolution in sound quality. My point is, I think that what we're doing is we're trying to ask individuals to understand we only have these few things that we're really focusing on, that we're really asking you to work with. We're not asking you to go to the whole board and understand the complexity of what's going on with the team. We are asking people to do the work themselves, to practice with the sliding up and down of what they may need and what they may not need before they go all in. There's a unique relationship that exists when you understand that development is integrated. It is both with the team, but most importantly with the individual. Because we say this in almost every team session that we do. The phrase is, the teams that get it right understand that every individual member of the team is a contributing and shaping member to the outcome of what's happening in that team culture. Whether they're fully engaged or fully disengaged, and everywhere in the middle, they all have a shaping influence. That means that there's a higher degree of importance on understanding what each person is bringing, positively, negatively, anywhere in between, and how do we truly integrate that with whatever it is that we're working on. And in this conversation, this is kind of like the genesis of the whole process. How well do you know yourself? With a simple understanding of what do you bring? What's that positive side? And what are some of the issues that are common that you just simply trip up on? It's just who you are by nature. And let's just start there.
How do you answer that question? How well do you know yourself? Because I'm 43.
Practice.
Practice, yeah. I'm 43. Like, how well do I know myself? I feel like I've gone through these phases in life of like, oh, I really know myself well. And then like something will happen. I'll read some more books. I'll, maybe be in like a coaching type relationship and be like, oh, I have no idea who I was. I mean, I think of, my wife and I were coming up on 20 years of marriage. It's like, who were we back then? Like, who are those people? We saw some pictures recently. Like, I have no idea who that person is. So how do you, because it's always evolving, it's always expanding, it's always changing and growing. Can you even answer that question of how well do I know myself? Are there some, I guess I'm looking for, especially for our listeners, some practical like tips of like, how could I answer that question to know where I'm at and where I need to get? Obviously, it's going to be so different from everyone. So maybe that I'm asking you an impossible question, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because what we are trying to do is we are trying to frame a conversation, just one conversation that is asking each of our participants to do a type of reflection that gives them the chance to know themselves better.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, when we frame that question that then leads to a conversation with their peers, when we frame the question, 9 times out of 10, they've not thought about that question before. They've not gone that direction. They haven't done that kind of like self-evaluation. Like, is that really me? So, for example, maybe Nathan, you can play along with this one. So, for example,
I love it.
we asked the question, what are some of your common expressions, just a common expression of who you are that positively influences somebody else? A common expression, it could be too close to you, you barely see it. So that's the phrase, or that's the question. And then we tell them, here are the 4 different expressions that we want you to consider. Choose one.
What do you mean when we say expression? I'm thinking of like,
Here's one expression: a person who consistently brings vision or clarity whenever they show up. They either see the future, it's crystal clear to them, or in complexity, they bring clarity. It's just who they are. They have a clear sight. That's one expression.
got it. Okay.
A second expression is awareness or understanding. That's like when there's confusion, when there's misinterpretation, this person just naturally is aware that things are maybe drifting to the side, or they just have a clearing understanding of, well, this is really what we're talking about. And when they speak, everyone just, the misinterpretations go away. All of a sudden, clarity is there. A third expression is the kind of people, and Nathan, I know you know people like this. They simply trust or assume positive intent all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I trust you, or I assume that you're good natured. And that's just how they show up. That's just a common expression of their personality when they're with other people. And the fourth one is the common expression of someone who just wants everyone involved. And so what they bring is invitation or inclusion. Like they may invite because they see talent. They may include because they see someone getting left behind. They just want the team to have that cohesion. Those are simply 4 common expressions. So we ask people, which one of those 4 do you believe best describes how you show up as a leader or as an influencer on a team? Then they choose. And that is the beginning of the reflection.
What was the first one again you said? Was that
The vision
the
or
vision?
clarity?
It's kind of that way of seeing.
So it's vision or clarity, the simplification, the trust,
Awareness or understanding.
awareness, understanding, and what was the last one?
Trust or assume. It's in the notes.
Oh, awareness, understanding, trust. Oh, I should read my notes. Where in the notes?
In the
Find
green,
this.
it's the
In
bridge
the
discussion.
green. Oh, there it is. So this listener, this will be in the show notes as I look at my own
Show notes.
my own notes here. So which one are you, Brian, Linda?
I am the invitation and inclusion. And I think it's because of my passion for connection, for meaning, and for people that are going to be part of something to really feel not necessarily like onboarded well, but woven into the fabric of what's about to be sewn all together. And so I think the rest of them kind of happen after that one.
What about you, Nathan?
What are you drawn to?
Well, I was going to try to ask the two of you first so I could stall. Well,
Okay.
Okay.
I think for me, some of the things I want to say is like, I just assume people are going to want to be involved or going to complete stuff. I just assume that everything's going to just work out. You know, all I have to do is like invite you or something or have a conversation. And I tend to trust people in that kind of relationship to like play on the team. And then here we go. I just think that once you say start, I just assume everyone's going to start. So I oftentimes get confused, like, where is everybody? I thought we all started together.
I thought we were on the same page with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I can see that for both of you. I think for me, vision or clarity and understanding or awareness. I don't know if this is it, but I really want to know where we're going. What are we doing?
Yep.
And if I'm not in charge of the team or the group, I want to like try to help the team leader figure out those things. Like we were talking about the other day. What is actually the purpose of our website? Is it to do this? Is it to do that? Is it to do this other thing? And so I think that's, gosh, in most groups that I show up, even, you know, we have some families staying with us right now. The other night we were just like, all right, guys, we need to be on the same page. Like, can we discipline each other's kids? What's the deal with spoons? Like, let's talk through meal planning, you know, just like really wanting to get like on the same page with everyone. So I don't know if that's those categories.
Well, it's an awareness of some confusion or potential conflict or someone getting let down, want to seek understanding. I'm just wondering if it's that one in that illustration.
Yeah, I think understanding or awareness. Yeah, it probably is that one. Are there dark sides to these? I don't know why I'm thinking of that, because my other thought in my head was like, it's also maybe a little of a control issue here.
Well, Nathan, it's funny that you should ask, because each of these common expressions has the other side of the coin, which we call the common issues.
Yep.
And so then we bring up the common issues that our research has found are predominant in a lot of teams. And so we've had just 4 common expressions that we just named, and there are 4 common issues that we would say are the other side of this coin.
Because on one side of the coin would be vision and clarity, and the other side are blind spots.
Oh, not blind spots.
So one side of the coin is vision clarity. The other side of the coin are blind spots. And blind spots, right? So it's a way of seeing where you don't see. This is oftentimes a place where team members make presumptions. They form quick conclusions about people. They just assume different things. But one of the things that we notice with blind spots is that sometimes it's just a lack of experience, a lack of maturity,
lack of opportunity.
A lack of opportunity. So you can come in, just really excited, and it's not just that you are a positive person, but that you don't know that there is a cliff coming.
You don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
The second common expression we said was awareness and understanding. Well, the other side of the coin for that one is misinterpretation. And with misinterpretation, I know people's minds can begin to wander already. And what we're saying is that if you don't have a common language or a shared experience, and oftentimes there are behaviors that intensify, timing gets off, and people are often misinterpreted. And we all know you're misinterpreted by body language, facial expressions, the process that you're trying to integrate. Maybe it's your culture of origin is often misinterpreted, your level of awareness, intensity levels. All of those things can be misinterpreted quite easily. And usually it's without someone knowing that they are grossly misinterpreting what's going on.
So that's why getting to know each other, whether it's
really important.
Team building or even team dinner or coffee gives you a chance to really get to know each other in a different way, so that this
is not my I hate you face. It's my I'm thinking about you face.
I'm intense about this. I'm intense about this. The third common expression is positive intent or trust. And when you bring that to the table, Brian was mentioning it, he does. He brings a sense of trust. On the other side of that coin are the people that the common issue of creating assumptions, making assumptions about people, assuming this is just a generalization of everybody. Everyone in Portland does this. Everyone in Minneapolis does that. And there's nothing understood. It's almost like conflict and tension just live here.
And oftentimes assumptions are also known as a person's bias or their belief system or stereotypes that they carry, quick judgments, pre-conclusions, things like that often lead to assumptions, and those assumptions really limit a person from being seen or feeling known.
And the fourth common expression was invitation or inclusion. The other side of that coin, the common issue, is assimilation, where new members are not really integrated into the team. They're not encouraged to help shape. They just assimilate, just come along. But how do you develop this sense of integration, true onboarding, where people feel like, yes, you are invited to shape this culture moving forward?
And assimilation is not just limited to onboarding. Assimilation is also ongoing. And that is the marginalization of team members for whatever reason, an assumption, a misinterpretation, a blind spot, which leads to someone being sidelined and not included, even though they may have the experience and the expertise that's absolutely needed.
That's good. So just kind of briefly, how does a team get started doing this? Like maybe this is another podcast, but is there a simple little quick takeaway? Everything we've heard here and talked about, is there like a quick takeaway or something that, at your next staff meeting, do this little thing to just kind of take that one baby step down the road to this?
I would start with this icebreaker question. I would say with this, opening question of, what does it mean for you to be known? What does it mean for you to be known? So in the context of this team, what does it mean for you to be known? And what does it feel like?
Wow.
Right? Because if you start there and you feel known in a space, even in a professional context, this is not like deep knowing, like lots of years of marriage knowing. This is a work context professionally. When I feel known, how do I feel? And when people start to wrestle with that, we start to hear some of their values of belonging or meaning or what it means when they're understood, because they can work even faster and be more productive. And when some of the ways that they're not being known or there isn't a knowing amongst colleagues, that's when all these issues and expressions bubble up.
Is there anything that I'm looking at this and thinking, I want to get on this, I want to do this, but do we hijack ourselves? Do we do things to intentionally not be known, if that's even a thing?
Being known is scary. As humans, being known is scary. It's also the most freeing thing that you can experience. So there are a lot of ways that a lot of behaviors that we demonstrate that show that we don't want to be known. But all ages, we as humans have a desire to be known. And so encouraging people to step over I always do this to, I use humor to block me or whatever.
That's good. Well, Brian and Linda, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Nathan.
I'm Nathan Freeberg.
I'm Linda Schubring.
And I'm currently Brian Schubring.
And on behalf of our entire team that may or may not include Brian Schubring, I don't know.
I don't even know what that means.
Thanks for listening.
Talk about being
Oh, Brian.
You're so known.
known, not known. The new
not
Brian
known.
Schubring.
The new known and
the
known
new and
known.
improved.